If you listen to the show, you already know that we cannot exist without our sponsors. They are the ones who make things happen behind the scenes. So let's acknowledge Fuji Sports. We've been working with these guys for a while now, not only as far as this podcast is concerned, but also at the RŌL Academy. We've had their gear. I personally use their gis. What a phenomenal product.
Yeah, I mean, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, MMA, tape, bags, anything you need for your Jiu-Jitsu journey, you can find at fujisports.com.
Let's talk RŌL TV. There's so much content on there. It's ridiculous at this point. But I think what is even more intriguing, as time went on during the project, we've been recording most of the events that were taking place here at RŌL Academy. At this point, I mean, we have guys like Chris Howder, Armin Fati, Rafael Lovato Sr., and Pete the Greek. I mean, there are so many different events that we've kind of recorded it. Don't you think that's amazing? I mean, points of reflection and kind of going back for all the students to see what really happened and refresh their memory.
Yeah, I think it's great, you know, being able to go back and look at all these high-level practitioners, Octavio Kudo, like one of the names you didn't mention. And I mean, just these guys that have been doing this for so long come in, teach these amazing seminars and workshops, and it's all recorded and there for you to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get additional savings on all this, type in code RŌL Radio at the coupon and get additional 30% off of your membership.
Nice. Go to rolacademy.tv. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please remember to hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. That ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content that you have come to expect. Today's guest is another Jiu-Jitsu globetrotter. He has turned his lifelong love of martial arts into his passion, traveling across the world teaching Jiu-Jitsu in so many countries he has lost count. Charles Harriott joins the RŌL Radio to discuss his teaching style, how he has figured out how to enjoy life on the road, how teaching everything teaches nothing, and how it is hard to let go of the ego. Here is the RŌL Radio with a man that has extensive knowledge in Tae Kwon Do, American Kenpo, kickboxing, Judo, submission wrestling, Kung Fu, Kali, and has his black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, Charles Harriott.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we are live.
There we go.
I think that was the best clap like ever.
It was okay. I mean,
you always know how
it can
to
only
break
get
things down.
So the clap is either bad or it's good. I don't think there's like a better or best. There's two levels. It's either you screwed it up or you hit it, right? It's just a clap. So don't get too excited.
Listen, we do this often in our meetings. And this today I was like, what are we going to talk about?
I'm going to get fired again here?
No, I wouldn't do it on the air. But share a good thing from last week. Like, do you have anything good that happened? Like, we often in our team meetings we always say, "Hey, share good stuff. Share good stuff." I'm curious, how was your last week?
Well, let's see what's going to come to mind real quick. I don't know. You put me on the spot. I can say, and it's happened a couple of times recently. You know, Jiu-Jitsu is expanding, and I think it's reaching people that have never, that probably 20 years ago, 10 years ago, wouldn't even have considered it. And I've had a couple people, appointments here at the Academy where people that were extremely nervous and expressed it. And usually people don't, everybody's a little bit nervous, right? But there was two people in particular that expressed how nervous they were. So instead of just saying, something flippant over a text, don't worry about it, we'll see you when you get here. I called them, to make it a little bit more, to put them at ease. And, we've got 2 new members because of it. I think that maybe if we handled it the way we would have handled it 5 years ago, who knows if they even would have shown up, but I think reaching out to people and letting them know that it's going to be safe. It's going to be, what they're looking for, I think, right? Setting expectations. So that was really nice to help those people out. And then they've been here quite often, since then. So it's cool.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Gary is kind of in charge. The first thing that people see when they walk into the academy. So Lord help us.
I make a good first impression.
But I think you bring up something really cool that sometimes perception of what is happening in people's minds, is not necessarily the result that they are getting after a class or 2 or 3 of jiu-jitsu. And as cliche or mediocre as sounds, jiu-jitsu does change lives in some way. And I know you disagree with it.
I didn't say that.
Yes, you did. We've had many conversations on this. But I think in some way it does make an impact, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I always talk about, that it's the vehicle, right? You've changed your life. You've made the decisions. You've taken the steps. But jiu-jitsu is a great vehicle to do all that through. And hopefully that, the apprehension that these people felt, I'm guessing, is part of their everyday life. And it wasn't unique to coming in here. And hopefully that'll help them, them making that step, will help them, make that step again in other parts of their lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And speaking of that, let's talk to our guest.
Oh, segue?
He has segue. Boom. I'm just pivoting it. That's how awesome I am. You didn't even notice I did it. But listen, let's bring our guest in, because my understanding is that he traveled the world. And I am actually curious how that varies between country, or does it? Maybe it's all universal. Charles, welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for giving us about an hour of your time.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How's everything going on your side?
Things are going pretty well. Just got back home from actually a long trip. So I just got back to Florida yesterday, and I'll be here for a massive 3 days, and then I'm back on the road, and then I'll be home for 3 more days and back on the road. So pretty much for the next 6 weeks, I'll be in the U.S., but still traveling. But I just got back from like a 6-week trip in Europe and Western U.S. So it's a little drop in Florida.
Jet lagged? Yes, no? I mean,
I don't usually get jet lag, but yesterday I was just so tired that because I thought I escaped it, because I got back to New Jersey a couple days ago, and I purposely made myself stay up as late as I could to try and resync. And but when I got back to Florida, Frontier messed up our flights, and so we missed our bus from Orlando to Gainesville. So we ended up sleeping at the airport, which did not help. And so now yesterday I just ended up sleeping in and like waking up at 2 a.m. So I'm a little bit off, but I'll hopefully resync up in the next couple of days.
There's nothing better than the airport plastic chairs, and you get fresh overnight, right? I mean, that just creates a different dynamic, right?
Yeah. Or when you decide on the shorter trips, usually we just leave our car there, but leaving your car in airport parking for 6 weeks, I don't recommend it.
So I think what's interesting about you is, at least what I understand, that you travel by choice. You love being on the road.
Yeah, I really do.
What is so appealing about being on the road? Because I'll tell you, like, I traveled in my previous life when I was in corporate, and there were times when I was gone for 3 days and back for a couple, and again on the road and again and all that. There was the period of my time, and I was beat up. What makes it so appealing?
That's the interesting. I guess it obviously has its ups and downs. There are definitely times when, like yesterday, when like things just kind of don't come together, where your body gets beat up. But I think I just kind of figured out some things that worked for me. So, for example, of all the modes of transit, I love trains. There's something about the smoothness of the trains, at least in some countries, that like I just get kind of hyper productive. And so I'll like have a sandwich or some juice, and just I'll be knocking out flyers and like stuff that I need to do. Like all my work gets done while I'm in transit. And I always love that. In earlier times, I used to take the sleeper trains. I don't do that so much anymore. I just really love falling asleep and waking up in a new place, because I feel like I cheated. I feel like I never had to waste time sleeping in a hotel or something. I got to like make the travel and the sleep one thing. I do that less and less now. I'm traveling a lot, well, like 90% of the time with my girlfriend, Natasha. And so we tend to travel a bit nicer than I did when I was traveling alone, because she has, not just she has standards, like she has just reasonable things where like we can just sleep in a bed instead of a train, Charles. Like that's, and I'm like, you know what? Or like I was like, yeah, you got a good point. So and so like the addition of her to my travels has definitely made some changes on it. But as far as getting beaten up, like it just kind of ebbs and flows. Like the jiu-jitsu will beat your body up always. So like doing the globetrotters camps where I'll be rolling 2 to 6 hours a day for 5 to 7 days in a row, that beats me up, but there's something exciting about it. So as long as I don't get like an acute injury, I guess kind of the endorphins of like loving my life and like loving all the interesting people I get to roll with. Because at this point, I've been doing it a while, and like there's about a dozen guys that I'll see at various camps that like, like Wim Deputer's there, or like Alexander Neufong's there. Like I get to see like how they've grown since I saw them a year ago or 6 months ago. And I know there's going to be some like wacky creations that I have to deal with. And like that excitement kind of, I guess, keeps me going.
Well, good for you. That's number one. I love the fact that you love your life. So many people are not in those fortunate positions. But you skim through the topic, and I want to get back to that for a second, because what I heard is that since you have your girlfriend, it's not that her standards were high, but that Charles the Bachelor, the standards were lower.
Oh yeah, I definitely had lower. It's really it. It's not even her standards. It's like what I'm willing to put myself through and what I'm willing to put somebody I love through are very different. So like if someone's like, you're going to sleep on a crash mat in the middle of Montana, in the middle of winter, I'm like, that sounds great. But I'm not bringing my girlfriend to sleep on a crash mat in the middle of winter in Montana. As much as she might be down for the adventure, I'm going to try and get somewhere that has heat. But so it's definitely like expanded my travel options beyond simply where's the open mat, where's the tough guys, where are the cool guys, where's the interesting roles, to also like, ooh, let's make sure there's time to see this museum or see this national park, or like, ooh, this amazing food that I love. Let's share that with her. So like, not to mention that when it comes to teaching, I never appreciated how much value a good uke could bring until like I had the same uke with me for a long period of time, and that relationship that we've built and her feedback and her advice to the people that are receiving the technique, I keep getting compliments on it. Like we just taught a seminar at Tony Silva's in New Jersey, and that was the first thing that he and a lot of his students said was like the feedback that she gave about, you're supposed to feel this, not that. It's supposed to work like this, was infinitely more helpful than if I grab a random guy in the gym and I do the technique to him and he gets the special feelings of like how it actually works, but the rest of the room has no idea.
Yeah.
And so like, that's really been helpful.
Would you agree with the fact that teaching, it's almost an art in essence, where you and Uki, you need to have a special chemistry in a sense to perform in this act of presentation, if you will, and really make it cohesive for the receiving party for this to work?
I think that yes, but at the same time, like, I think that it's not that you need to. I think you can get your point across with random ukes. I think you can do the base level of conveying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with random participants. I did that for years. But the level of value you can bring, kind of the bandwidth of knowledge you can pass when you and your uke are on the same page and understand this is the type of resistance I want here, I want there, because I don't want to make it because performance is what it is. There's a chemistry there, but it feels kind of like we're improv comedians a lot, because a lot of jiu-jitsu is a little bit of humor and a little bit like, but I want to make sure when I say performance, it's not that kind of like the if you remember like the old school like Steven Seagal performances, where like his ukes were like stuntmen, like they were doing the over exaggerated front flips and all that for him. And I don't want to misconstrue that it's that.
Yeah.
Because it's still jiu-jitsu. The techniques have to work against the resisting opponent.
Yeah.
However, when I'm teaching a move that is meant to deal with a particular context, it's meant to deal with a opponent that is driving forward. If the person I'm demonstrating on chooses to retreat, well, this particular move just does not work in that scenario, and I would do something different. So having Natasha be on the same page with me about that really, really helps. And I completely agree with you, because especially as we've taught the same seminars over and over again, she knows what's coming next. Yeah. And if I miss something, the best thing that's been happening recently, because I'm constantly trying to tweak and improve my approach to teaching various topics, is she'll be like, hey, you forgot this. Or, hey, last time you taught this, everyone got lost in this exact spot in the seminar. And you had to call it, maybe we should emphasize point X, Y, Z a little more. Or like occasionally I'll say it or she'll say it. And I think that back and forth, where at the end of usually I'm saying, I usually stop and I'm like, hey, Natasha, anything to add? That little moment I've noticed also kind of lets people realize, like, oh, she's not just your girlfriend. Like, she's somebody who actually knows what we're teaching as well as she can. Like, whether or not it's as well as me, well, I've been training a bit longer than she has, but for the exact content of that seminar, which she's taken with me now and helped me present, in some cases up to 20 times, she knows it really, really well. And oftentimes better than people whose belt might be more advanced than her, because she's become a specialist in this seminar from teaching it with me and using it in her roles.
And I think this is what a lot of people don't understand, looking from the outside in to the instructor's world, is the fact of, and Carrie and I, we talked about this so many times on this show, is knowing jiu-jitsu is one thing. Knowing how to teach it, that's another. But there is the next level of when you can relay the information to the student, to the group of students, but then make it fun, make it entertaining, make it engaging, and make it so they remember what happened. That is the key. Is not knowing 50 techniques that were shown, is walking away with something heavy and tangible. Like, how many times it happens where students are in a seminar with, X instructor, they walk out of the seminar and they're like, God damn, like, I don't remember what happened. Like, I was there.
You can see it in real time in the room, where it's like everybody's excited. It's the beginning. It's the start. You see the one technique or whatever, you go off, you come back, and if there's like 5 or 7, or 10, you can see everybody kind of looking around or looking at each other across the room, like, and even though you're getting a ton of information, you're like, you're watching the clock now, because it's at some point it's useless.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I think that you guys touched on a couple of things that I've kind of been obsessing about for the past 3 to 5 years. And one of those is like, what's my job at a seminar? And I thought about it and I realized something. It's actually something, because I did, before I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I did American Kenpo, I did striking martial arts, I did karate, I did kickboxing. And there was an old saying back in karate, and that was, how do you teach somebody nothing? You teach them everything. Because if I teach you 50 things in 2 hours, you're going to be grasping at straws. You're going to remember it, but at the end of the seminar, there's going to be a feeling you have, and that feeling is going to be, wow, that guy knows so much. He's so impressive. I hope one day I can be like that guy. And you leave the seminar so impressed and so, wow, this person's just, they're just so beyond me. Like, I could never remember. Of course, you can't remember 50 things. No one can. No one can absorb knowledge that way. And I was always wondering, like, was this on purpose or is this just ignorance? Because in some cases, people are just amazing fighters. The reason why they got booked is because the gym said, what does he want? And he said worlds. And they're like, that sounds great. Bring him out. Because you want high caliber jiu-jitsu. And you get this person who's an amazing fighter, and after the match is over, maybe they want to roll everybody, they beat everybody up. Yeah, I'm so impressed. But they're just giving you a laundry list of the stuff they love. Or oftentimes there's the big joke of seminar techniques, which is some complete BS they made up that looks really cool that not even they could hit in a row. But it's very impressive. And so for me, it was always about, I kind of call it my hybrid approach. My hybrid approach is that I want to leave you with something conceptually profound that you can chew on intellectually and apply to your jiu-jitsu for days and weeks after, no matter what your skill. Because I can say something that hopefully will shift the way you think about some piece of your jiu-jitsu. Doesn't matter what it is. I have lots of them. My current obsession, my current kind of guiding light of my jiu-jitsu is this sentence. I'm very big on trying to get lots of knowledge into small sentences. And my current sentence is, in the art of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, my goal is to make my body a shape that is hard for my opponent to attach to, while simultaneously attaching myself deeply to their major and minor spaces. And then I define the major space as the armpits, the back of the knee, and the minor space to the L on the neck. And now it's to call it just one sentence. I'm reaching, but like that entire thing is now my approach to all of jiu-jitsu. And anything that I'm doing, it'll be informed by that ethos. I'm on defense. Well, am I easy to attach to? If I'm easy to attach to, they're going to attach to me, and they're going to either use that to take me down, hold me down, cause me problems. If I'm on offense, well, am I deeply attaching to them?
See, when I look at when I listen to you and when I reflect on what you're talking about versus what jiu-jitsu looked like, or the way how it was taught 20 years ago, not even 20, 10 years ago, you know,
and in some places right now.
Well, that's true. But, you know, like, I think we are in this unique time in the jiu-jitsu evolution where, one, the sport is growing tremendously and is growing fast. That's one. Two, there is intelligence behind the sport. And what I mean by that, we get smarter about training smarter versus harder. We think about the athletics of the jiu-jitsu, you know, whether it's hobbyist or professional. But we also, and this is the pivot point in my mind, is we get really smart about teaching and benefiting our students to maximize their success. See, when I look 20 plus years ago when I was starting, and I love all my instructors. I'm going to frame this in because somebody always takes it the opposite direction, the wrong way, but it is what it is. I love all my instructors. But the jiu-jitsu taught 20 years ago is not the same that it is today. We learned literally 20 moves. Each move had 5 steps, and you had to memorize them. If you did them incorrectly, you got smacked in the head. It is what it is. Like that's jiu-jitsu 20 years ago. And I love my instructors, okay? I do. I love them to death. But the point is, we didn't know any better back then. We just didn't. Today, there is this evolution that takes place, and we have intelligence behind it. It's not that we're smarter. We have intelligence. We make right choices, and I think a lot of it is to benefit our students. And that's what you are talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, well it's because just like you, I started around 20 years ago, and a lot of it was our coaches were just showing us how they were taught.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. It's like the view. It's a very simplistic view, but it's not entirely wrong because it works for a lot of people. You think about a lot of the great athletes that have come up from our generation and before. It was, I think that I'm good at jiu-jitsu. I want you to be like me. I'll just make you do the shit that I did.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does work. But at the point is that, then if that's the case, if I think I had any sort of special gifts or advantages in my journey, if you don't, you will not reach my level. And I don't want my students to be as good as me. I want them to surpass me.
Or vice
so they must be more efficient.
Or even vice versa. If you do have some special skills or components, and I don't take advantage of them, you will not grow as high as you could.
Exactly.
Right? So this is the intelligence that I'm talking about. And today I think
it's pedagogy. It's the art of teaching. And so yes. I think that like I went to in college, I minored in education. And so like pedagogy is a thing, like how you share information drastically impacts the retention of people. But most of our coaches, well, first off, there's a percentage of our coaches who we love them, but they did not take the act of teaching very seriously.
No,
they often thought of our entire class on the car ride to the gym. which they were usually late for.
I have flashbacks. Oh my
God. But at the same time, like, they were so talented. They had such great jiu-jitsu. They had been, learning jiu-jitsu the hard way. They had been rolling really, really hard for hours and hours. They sacrificed their body. They had injuries, and they shared what they learned through pain with us, oftentimes painfully as well. Yeah. But what I think that gave us is something that should not be discounted, which is grit. What the old way gives you is grit. And grit is 100% necessary.
Yep.
However, once one has grit, pounding it every single day, rolling as hard as you can, your body will break down. Yeah. And that's why, like, I hate to pick on them, but my favorite example is the Meow Brothers. No one trains harder than the Meow Brothers. They are an example of the hardest work ethic, in my opinion, in jiu-jitsu. However, like, they're younger than me, and they walk like old men because they've destroyed their bodies by how hard they train. And I like they've come up with some brilliant jiu-jitsu. Like, I think at their peak with the whole rivalry between them and Keenan, like, some of the most interesting and unique things in gi jiu-jitsu came from them. But eventually, not tapping to leg locks and not tapping to really anything, your bones and joints just break. And did you need to get all of these injuries to acquire those skills, or was there a better way?
Right, and that's the $1 million question. And again, everything we're saying right now is kind of targeted towards professionals. But if we take this to the hobbyist level, or guys who don't make money in jiu-jitsu, all these injuries, all this wear and tear, all this mileage that's being put on their body will only convert into them quitting simply because they can't afford not do their professional lives. Right.
Well, see, the funny thing is, you say professionals. However, in my travels, because of the fact that I'm not a world champion, a lot of them, actually not all, but like I'd say the majority of the gyms I get booked at are hobbyist heavy. They're more hobbyists than professionals. And I think that there's a large percentage of these hobbyists that, even though they're hobbyists, they're doing the same thing. Like, especially the purple and brown belts. In my opinion, purple and brown belts under 30 are the hardest rolling people on the planet, and oftentimes to their and their training partners' detriment, because especially if they don't compete.
So I agree with you.
Because every roll is Abu Dhabi for them, because there is no competition.
But listen, so let me pick your brain on this, because I actually had a similar conversation with somebody else on a similar topic. Is the fact that they are rolling on or they have the same procedure, if you will, of training as the professionals do, is it that they want to be as good as the professional, or is that the professionals are simply hovering where everybody else is, and they are not treating this as a professional sport? And this is why I'm saying this. That's a
fascinating question.
Look, and this is why I'm saying this. Jiu-Jitsu is one of the very few sports, and if not the only one, that we treat everything as a grind and as a hard physical workout. You don't see basketball players playing a game every single night. No. They run drills, they practice, and they go to the game with the A game. You don't see football players doing that. No, they run plays, and they do drills, and then on Sunday, they show up and play games. In jiu-jitsu, we get into a sparring session, and it's fracking balls out to the wall. I'm taking your head off because that's what I do. Am I wrong on this?
I don't think that you're wrong, but I think there's a lot to unpack with that question that I kind of want to dive into piece by piece. Because I do agree that, because as a sport, as an activity, as a martial art, I would say that we're definitely young compared to other martial arts. But as a sport, I think we're infantile, because our sport, there's no other sport that you can think of where, like, the rules aren't even decided. Like, there's so many types of jiu-jitsu to train in, and like, we don't all even agree on what the rules are.
Yep.
Like Judo has a lot of, like, there's Kosen Judo, but if you're going to compete in Judo, there's really one rule set. It's the Olympic rule set. Yep. Like, they're trying to bring the Kosen Judo rules back, and they're so much more fun, and I like them better. But if someone says I compete in Judo, it's the Olympic rule set.
Yeah. Yep.
And the people that train it, because I think that comparing football and basketball is a little hard, because most people that are adults don't learn those sports. The main difference in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and most other sports is that the people learning the sport are adults. Almost every other sporting endeavor, you play the sport as an adult, but you learned it as a child. And because you learned it as a child, you learned it when your body was made of rubber. And so you could do all of those things, and you had an authority figure that made you do those drills. You didn't have a choice. They made you. It's not like if you're a kid, chances are, and your parent puts you in a sport, and you're bored of running layup drills in a basketball court, and you come to your dad and say, I want to quit, layup drills are boring. If your dad really cares about basketball, he's going to make you go anyway. If your dad doesn't care about basketball, okay, no more basketball for you. And that's the end of your basketball journey.
Yep.
But in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if your gym is being run like a professional sports team and there's no fun, it's just all vegetables, all acquiring skill, a large percentage of people will leave. And if that gym needs to make money to keep the doors open, that gym will go out of business.
Yep.
Drills are the vegetables of Jiu-Jitsu. Not when I say drills, I do not mean those horribly useless dead drills where you do 100 arm bars in a row. That is not what I mean. What I mean is specific and situational training, gamified things that have a goal and intention. But the idea of something that would be the equivalent of layup drills in basketball or patterns in football, that's the vegetables. But it's nowhere near as fun as playing the game. If you never give the ice cream to your students are going to leave unless your students are singularly focused and understand that their mission in life is to be a professional athlete, which most of us are not. So because we're mainly teaching adults, and adults are taught differently than children, in some advantageous ways and some disadvantageous ways. The advantageous thing about teaching adults is that you can talk about theory and concepts in a way that most children won't understand. And so that's the advantage of it. The disadvantage is they could be anywhere. They could be doing their fantasy draft. They could be playing Xbox. They could use their money to do another activity. They could play pickleball. Why are they here with you? Because you're giving them something that they're not getting elsewhere. You're giving them a community. You're giving them kind of a stress relief. You're giving them endorphin. You're giving them something. There has to be a reason for them to stay. And I think that the reason why most of the time the professionals are not that far from the obsessed hobbyists is because of the access to professional grade information that is now available in the past 5 years. I think if you took away BJJ fanatics and took away the access to online jiu-jitsu instruction, the gap between professionals and hobbyists would massively increase again. The reason for the closing of that gap is that the professionals, the vast majority of professionals, just train really hard. There's only a small number of teams that have really gotten it down and organized their training to a level that is comparable to other professional sports. The most of the time, because jiu-jitsu is such a young sport, if you just take someone with enough effort, hard work, and high quality jiu-jitsu that they can get from an instructional or move to a team with a high level training partner or two, they can make it, especially because jiu-jitsu has something that no other sport has, which is the colored belt league.
Yeah.
The idea that I'm 55, and I want to start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. 2 years in, I can compete for a blue belt world championship. There is no other sport on earth that a 55-year-old is going to pick up and 2 years later compete for a world title.
You're right. You're
Not
100%
possible.
right. You don't
And
see
so
that. You don't see that in wrestling. You don't see.
Well, there aren't even wrestling classes to do that in America.
I get it, but even if they were, even if you look at college or high school, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter how long you've been training. You know, how much do you weigh? Then go, right? So you're right. The diversity of opportunities that we have in jiu-jitsu is by far larger than any other sport. But as a result of that, we are seeing the consequences that we are seeing. Yeah. As a result of that, we are seeing that, well, let me ask you this then. Do you think the fact that a lot of professional trained hard versus smart is a result of the fact that the money is still not there in jiu-jitsu?
I don't think that's the reason. I mean, I guess.
Let me challenge you.
You could say that if the money was there in jiu-jitsu, we could afford better talent in coaching, and that better talent in coaching would steer the students better.
That's what I mean.
That is a reasonable argument.
Yep.
However, I think that it's not just that. A big part of it is that jiu-jitsu is not just a sport. it's also a martial art. And in martial art comes mysticism, and comes this idea that your coach isn't just your coach. Your coach needs to be Mr. Miyagi. He needs to be the unbeatable master. Because think about it like this. I can't tell you how many times I've heard it. I heard it when I was a blue belt and a purple belt, and I still hear it now when I overhear students talking, no matter how good the class was. Because I go to BJJ Globetrotters camps where sometimes in some camps there's 30 black belts teaching, 30 different coaches over the course of a week. So there's a large swath of coaches, and it's almost impossible to see them all. And so after it's done, everyone's talking about the classes they took. Whose class do you take? I took this guy's class, that guy's class. And it's the same thing at other camps. I've taught at other camps besides Globetrotters. It's just the biggest camp that I teach at. They say, it was a great class. Have you rolled with them? Yeah, and it's somehow as if, even if this person gave you the best lesson in jiu-jitsu of your life, and you learned more than you ever had, if you could tap them out, somehow it's less.
Why?
It's so because it's almost like Christian Gaugard has this funny analogy about it. It's because we're monkeys, man. It's because at the end of the day, like we're animals, and like if it was jiu-jitsu or any other sport was just about the activity, there would be no need for medals or podiums. He had a whole thing. He has a whole presentation about this where he has a picture of the podium, and he's a picture of like all these pictures on Instagram of someone with their hand being held in the air. Why do you need that photo? You know you wouldn't. That photo is for Instagram. That photo is for your mom. It's for your dad. It's monkey plus one. I am higher than that monkey over there. I am in the herd, in the pack of animals that are humans. I've established myself as better than this other person in this particular endeavor.
But let me challenge you on this. Because this is mind-blowing.
I would love to be wrong.
So, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I want to dig deeper.
If you can prove me wrong, I'm real
this.
happy.
No, that's Gary's job.
No.
He always plays devil's advocate and he proves people wrong. No. Listen, look. Why from subconscious perspective, we are so hung up on beating our instructor versus learning what they know so we get better?
Because we do it with our instructor. We don't play football with our football coach. We don't box even with our boxing coach, our manager. You don't. So you have the opportunity in jiu-jitsu, which is much more rare, I think, than any other sport or activity. So then if a blue belt taps out a black belt on some rare occasion in an academy, and that gets out, that word gets out, that black belt's going to lose a lot of respect. Technically, he shouldn't. It's, things happen. But I think to speak to what Charles was saying is that mysticism, you have to be better at it than me in order for me to learn from you. However, if you go play football, professional football, and you have a 64-year-old coach, he knows the game better than you, but he could never step on the field again and do it.
And
Exactly.
I'm with you guys 100%, but look, this doesn't make logic in my mind.
If humans don't make logic, it don't make sense.
Listen, maybe that's mistake number one on my part. But listen, if we acknowledge the fact that knowing jiu-jitsu is something completely different than teaching jiu-jitsu, that creates a separation between practitioner and instructor. So why in the world would practitioner try to be better than an instructor? This is two completely different categories. It's black and white, comparing apples to oranges.
Okay, so I'm gonna go and kind of, I guess, steelman the idea as to why it's important. And the reason it's important is because of content. It's because before jiu-jitsu or every other martial art, have you seen the fake martial arts, quote unquote? The ones where not even the ones that are debatably fake. Like I'm talking about I think it's called like yellow bamboo or like dim mock. The ones that are shooting key waves at people. Those martial arts still exist.
They are real. What are you talking about?
And they still have massive followings. You've seen that video. There's my favorite video of this. There's a video. It's in Australia. And there's this poor woman who was a true believer in this martial art that she thought she was going to make an energy field to stop her student from running her over. And her student is a young 20-something jacked Australian dude. And they're on the beach and she's putting up her field of energy, and he runs and trucks her across the room and she goes flying. And he's in disbelief, and then he lays on the floor and starts convulsing because I think he psychosomatically believed it so much that if he knocked her down, he must be in pain from the energy field that he just ran through. And it's all complete nonsense. But at the end of the day, groupthink got a hold of that group. And so it's not as if it was like, I always thought about these things that like the people are just kind of in on the game. They're not in on the game. They drank the Kool-Aid. They really believe. And the great thing about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the same thing that's frustrating about us wanting the coach to be the grand master, is that it should work even if I don't believe. And that to me is the great thing about Jiu-Jitsu, is that you don't have to believe in Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah. It should still work. And if it doesn't, then we're becoming the very thing that a lot of us got into this to replace. Because part of the reason I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that I love American Kenpo, the style of karate that I did for years and years. But one of the things that always frustrated me was I learned all these techniques over here that I would practice and could do against the prescribed attacks, against a straight right punch or a round kick or a front kick, whatever. But then we sparred. And when we sparred, we all looked like kickboxers, all of us. All these different styles of karate, but if you put them with gloves, they look like kickboxers after about 30 seconds. Now, the details are a little different. We're not going to be exactly the same, but we're not doing our esoteric techniques that we were taught when we spar. And the auspices we were always fed were that you can't. It's too dangerous. And to a degree, right, hitting people in the groin regularly, poking them in the eyes, it is too dangerous to practice regularly. So you can't do it. But then your timing is off and you can't actually execute those techniques. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the beautiful thing about it is that we should be able to, if we have control, roll close to 100% with an older person, go to submission, stop before breaking or damaging, and prove, generally speaking, if techniques are effective. But size matters, youth matters, athleticism matters. So the idea that I should always win, that's silly. But I should be able to be somewhat effective against a beginner. Otherwise, what are we even doing here? But once I've taught you, right? If I'm teaching an NFL lineman Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if I've done a good job in a year or less, I should not be able to hold them down because they're an NFL lineman. They're a different caliber of human than I am, different caliber of athlete. And size matters. We have weight classes for a reason. But we still cling to this idea that somehow, because Mikey Musumeci is amazing and he can beat heavyweights, then size doesn't matter. It gets weird.
Yeah.
And I hope I haven't gotten too off in the weeds with the size debate, but size is part of it as well.
But I think what you're saying is that skill is one thing. And if we compare skill to skill, that's a one component, a one denominator. But if we add other components to this, the scale shifts in the various different ways, right? I mean, if you have somebody who weighs 130 and you put somebody who weighs 230, even though that smaller person might be more skilled, the physical attributes on the other side are just swaying the odds against the small person. I mean, this is pure physics. This has nothing to do with jiu-jitsu.
But
this is gravity.
Before you move on, I actually have an equation for that.
Yeah,
not the exact equation, but it's like a heuristic equation.
Yep.
If you view jiu-jitsu as using the laws of physics to your advantage, whether it be simple machines, wedges, levers, etc., then it's like an RPG. If I view jiu-jitsu like a video game a lot, and it actually helps understand it, the better your skill, it's a multiplier on your base attributes. Yeah. So say that I'm 100 right now. Truthfully, I'm a 185-pound man. I'm 36 years old. I have a certain degree of strength and agility, etc. The skill I have in jiu-jitsu, say, gives me a ×3 on my power in certain occasions. However, if I take a 21-year-old who weighs 285 pounds and can do like a 4-second 40, chances are their base attributes are double mine. Right now with them with zero skill, my jiu-jitsu helps me and I can possibly submit them. But once they get a little jiu-jitsu, they get a multiplier too.
Yep.
And then they should beat me.
Yeah.
They should. But that's hard for people to wrap their head around. So like if you're a heavyweight monster purple belt, I just met a heavyweight monster purple belt in Estonia. Is this random kid from Norway, amazingly good, and you could tell that like he'd been watching instructionals. His skill was very sharp, but he also had holes in his game, and so like he could sweep me. I'm very hard to sweep. I don't get swept very often. Like there's black belts that can't sweep me that I respect and I think are very much more skilled than this purple belt. But he's larger, and he used a particular sweep that I did not have a good answer for due to our arm length and leg length and the style. And he could sweep me. Now, after a few reps, was I able to defend it? Yeah, but he was able to sweep me and put me in danger and put me in horrible spots. Now, because he's still a purple belt and he didn't have enough skill in his finishing mechanics, he wasn't able to submit me. But if, for example, if he had skill in his finishing mechanics from a submission from that position he got me in, he could have submitted me. But does that mean that suddenly I don't have the right to teach him things?
Yeah,
of course not.
This is the interesting part of all this. Let me ask you a question about your equation thing, because that turned all the wheels in my mind. If the skill is the multiplier, is the age diminisher?
I don't think that the age is the diminisher necessarily, especially in the age of acai and Jesus. But,
the show just went to the next level.
But I think that it's your physical attributes. So like age is often considered a surrogate for damage accrued. It's a surrogate for loss of explosiveness. It's a surrogate for loss of athleticism. But it's not always that, right? Because if we look back, I'm not going to use the jiu-jitsu examples because I don't feel like getting into the fun, like this guy's on steroids, that guy's on steroids. There's people who are clearly on certain things at times. My favorite example is TRT Vitor Belfort. TRT Vitor Belfort is one of the best fighters of all time because he's been fighting for so long. He has so much experience, but to get that experience, like we said in the beginning, he destroyed his body.
Yeah.
He has so many injuries, so many things, so that without that TRT, he's usually coming into a fight a bit broken up, trying to train with these younger guys. Yeah. But when the UFC allowed that TRT exemption and he showed up looking healthy and more ripped than he was at 20.
Yeah.
And that's why, and like, did the TRT give him the ability to throw that spinning hook kick and knock Luke Rockhold's head off? No, he didn't. But it allowed him to be healthy enough in that match through all that extra hard training to have his timing down to a T to hit that kick. And in round 2 or 3 of the fight or whatever it was, to still have the cardio to produce that later in the match. Because just like when I was the young guy, when I was 25 rolling with the 35-year-old black belt, I knew that he was better than me, but I knew that he couldn't do 5 minutes at 100%. I knew that if I made the match have to happen as fast as possible, around 3.5, 4 minutes in, he was going to have a hard time keeping up with me. So it's like a bad video game. If I spam low kick the whole time, eventually you're going to get tired of defending it and I'm going to pull something off. Does it make me better? Of course it doesn't make me better, but I had to use what I had. And now the shoe's on the other foot. Now I'm 35, I'm 36, I'm 37. Now the 21-year-old's doing the same shit to me. And in a way, like, I deserve it because I did it when I was there. But on the other hand, like, what is our goal here? If our goal is just having fun, it's fine. But if our goal is to get better, then this isn't necessarily the way. So I think that training hard, honestly, twice a week, 3 times a week tops, I think that, but you have to give some amount of candy. You got to do specific training. Yeah. You got to do, I have a lot of like semi-rolling games because I had the opportunity to take over a school for a month at this gym called Binder Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in New Mexico back 2 years ago. And it was one of the most interesting experiences because I'd never run my own gym in my whole life. I'm always being the guy visiting, teaching seminars. So this for me was like, what's it like to obsessed with giving these students the most of my jiu-jitsu I possibly could in the best teaching methods I possibly could think of in this month. And for the people who wanted that, they loved it. For the people who were just there to get rid of their stress after a day of work, they hated my fucking guts, and they would rather do anything else. They didn't want all of my creativity. They didn't want to necessarily get better at jiu-jitsu every fucking day. Some days they just wanted to roll, to forget about whatever was stressing them out. And I didn't give that to them. And that was the biggest lesson that I learned. So I talked to people after I left, and I got feedback, and I was like, okay, for the guys who were there to, like, the white belts and blue belts, they were there to get better at jiu-jitsu, and they really wanted, they loved it. Even some of the advanced belts. But for the guys who, right, like, they just wanted to experiment with their own shit. They didn't necessarily want you can't give people a seminar, no matter how good the seminar is, every day.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned from that experience. I love those guys, and they taught me a lot, and I'm still keep in touch with some of them. But that was, to me, something that I'll never forget. Like, as much as we talk about teaching better and giving the vegetables, unless they're professional athletes, they don't just want vegetables. Yeah. You got to give that chance to let it out, because it's part of what jiu-jitsu brings to people.
And in a way, you highlight some really critical and important points of what jiu-jitsu truly is. It's not one dimensional. That's the whole idea here. We can stimulate ourselves physically, but we can also stimulate ourselves mentally. And then we have this community factor, which is completely something else from the other two. And I think when I think about a recipe for a success within the academy, it's having all three of them combined and blended in some ratio that services the people who come to train. And it's not all balls out. It's not all technique. It's not all chit chat and sit and bullshit. It's the three that create that, what we call community, right? Academy, or whatever term you want to use. This is what brings people all together.
But that third one's really important, and it's something that, like, I've always appreciated throughout my life. And I had it in breakdancing before I had it in jiu-jitsu, because I still remember, so to bring it into, you want to talk about a little bit of the travels, was back in 2005, I was on study abroad. I was 18 years old, I think. I want to say, I don't know I think I was 18 years old. I might have been 19, but 18 or 19. And I got trapped in Barcelona. It was my first time in Europe, my first time in Europe, and I messed up my trains, and I had no way of getting out of Barcelona. And I saw a group of guys from all over Europe. One of them was Polish, a bunch were Spanish, and they had a circle going, and they were dancing on the street to make some money. And I jumped in and I threw around. I did a set of b-boying. I usually say b-boying, but breakdancing, just to make it understood for people who don't necessarily know the language. And at first they were like, hey, what are you trying to do? This is our spot. And I was in my broken Spanish, because I was in Spanish on study abroad. I was in Spain on study abroad trying to learn Spanish. My Spanish was not great. And they understood that, like, oh, I'm not trying to steal their spot. I just have I explained to them that, like, I have a little bit of money, but, like, I have nowhere to stay for the night. Like, can you help me out? And I ended up dancing with them and, like, helping them make money for the rest of the day. And then one of them took me, and I slept on the couch of this Polish dude who, with his mom, in, like, this random spot in Barcelona. And then they explained to me how to get to where I had to go. And then I went off and continued my trip. But, like, these people who I didn't know at all, simply because I shared a passion for something that's hard to do. Breakdancing is hard to do. You can't just become good at it overnight. It takes effort. And I've seen the same thing with skateboarders. I've seen the same thing with people that snowboard. Any activity that enacts injury on the body to acquire, it builds a brotherhood. It builds a feeling of shared struggle, that anywhere on earth that you run into people that share that bond, you got friends. And there's always douchebags in every culture, but for the most part, you got friends. And that's the thing about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think a lot of the things that we complain about, like, they are a problem. We do want to fix it, but we don't want to fix it too well. Like, we do, Jiu-Jitsu should be uncomfortable. should everyone in the gym be limping because there's that asshole who looks at everyone and doesn't let go when they tap? No, that's stupid. But at the same time, I have no problem with heel looks. I love heel looks, but ripping positions in general. It could be the Kimura guy or the armbar guy as well. It's just the heel look one because you limp. Like there's something about damaging your legs that's more visceral for people. Same thing with damaging the spine. The dude who's can opening and breaking everyone's neck every day. Like I love can openers too, but you don't want to be injuring people. The neck and the leg, there's something extra when you hurt that. Like I hurt my arm a bunch, I've hurt my ankle a bunch, and I'll just keep training. I don't care. But when I've hurt my knee or my neck, it's a different thing. But back to what I'm saying, like there's something about sharing something that we all know. Like I guarantee you, both of you guys, something's broken. You guys have damaged something in jiu-jitsu, but you're still here. Yeah. Everybody I've never met a black belt who has not had something that they've a piece of their body that they've like almost sacrificed to acquiring the skill that they have, whether it be herniated discs or twisted ankles or torn labrums, or I don't think any of us have both our meniscus. I don't think there's any black belt.
I don't.
I've never met a black belt that has two good meniscus or misci. I've never. Like that's like a gimme. You've torn a meniscus.
Yeah. Either you're not training or you're lying, one or the other. Listen, you talk about a lot. You talk about the training strategies and cultures and bleeding all this together and being smart about it. You also have traveled around the world. By the way, quickly, drop me the number. How many countries have you visited so far?
I have actually lost track. Natasha, my girlfriend, she keeps track. Well, let's see here. So as of 2019, the number was 45. I'm probably 50s, approaching 60 at this point. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. I stopped counting. Just like the
point is that's a lot of. Yeah. The point is there's a lot of places. You know, there's a lot of cultures, a lot of different people. Which one has the best jiu-jitsu culture?
Oh, that's hard. I would say there's no country that has the best jiu-jitsu culture. It's not about the countries. It's individual gyms. Every single country has the same problems. Just the problems are highlighted differently and more intensely from country to country. But every single country has the ostriches that are going to pretend that it's 1991 and that if you train anywhere besides my gym, you're a creonge, and and that your coach should be bowed to off the mats as well, and the black belts should get to cut you in line at the restaurant. Like the ridiculous. There's every country on earth has that ridiculous crap going on to an extent. It's getting less in America, but at the same time, it's getting more in America, because even though in America we want to pretend that the entire jiu-jitsu culture in America is what we see from the big teams that compete or what we see in the big cities. But if you go to small town America, I guarantee you right now, there's still a guy in a small town in America, right? Gym in the town, and he got some mats in his basement, and his coach kicked him out the gym, and now he has nowhere to train. I know this because I've talked to multiple people where this has happened. Oh no, I think we froze.
You froze for a minute, but we got you back.
You back.
We got you back.
Okay, so did you miss that whole thing, or are we good?
I think you're good.
I think we got most of it. Yeah.
Okay, so just the point being that like that culture exists everywhere, and there's still the culture of gi versus no gi, where people get really like, this is the real jiu-jitsu stuff. Like, I can't say that there's a single country that has it figured out. I think that America, just by being large and having money, we're doing pretty well. Yeah. Because we can afford to employ and pay high-level coaches, and because we have enough humans in our country to have a rich competition scene. But I'm also American, so I'm biased. So
that's true. Listen, after traveling all these years, all these different regions, which one creates the best story? You have one?
Oh, okay. So like best story. What has happened?
You can drop weird ones too.
I can't say this is the best story, but it's a more recent story. And I'm trying it's mildly embarrassing to me, but off we go. So I was recently in Perth, Australia, and I visited my friend Josh Stolten with Natasha, and his nickname is Peaches. And so he runs the program at a gym called Taurus, and he trains at a gym called Essence. And for Taurus, I had taught a seminar at his home gym, and I was going to train with him at pro training with Natasha. However, we had just come from Indonesia, and I had lasted the entire trip in Indonesia without getting food poisoning until the third to last day. I had some suspicious chicken, and I got Bali belly. And me and the toilet were best friends for my last 2 days in Bali. And to the point where she was really worried because I was anything that I put in my mouth just
came out
anything. And she was really, really concerned. So she had to ask the locals, hey, don't give me the tourist medicine. That's just not working. What do you guys take? Don't lie to me. What, when this happens to you, what do you take? And she got this medicine that tasted like dirt. I put it, I ate it. It tasted like it tastes like they just gave me, they took dirt and made it a pill. That's what it tasted like. And so I ate the dirt pills and I started feeling a little bit better, but my stomach was still touch and go. With the sickness on the most terrifying plane. So the worst, who's getting lost again?
No, keep going. It does freeze for a second, but we're getting all of it.
Okay, good. Whenever I see the thing turn red, I'm concerned. All right, I'm flying on the worst airline as far as planes, not the worst airline as far as customer service. In America, we've managed to master shitty customer service with Spirit and Frontier fighting for the worst airline. But when you go to Asia, as much as they're very friendly, Indonesia is very friendly, the airline called Thai Lion Air has the most terrifying planes I've ever been on. Just
give us visual. What does that mean?
So it's not about how the plane looks. You look at the plane, it looks like a regional plane. If you've ever flown regional to a small town, it's not a giant plane, but it's just a regional plane. It doesn't look suspicious when you look at it. It's when the plane begins moving that you begin having feelings.
Yeah. Everything's rattling.
Yes, it feels as if every single bolt on this plane was not fully tightened. So as we're taking off, you hear everything starts. You're shaking, and your seatbelt, that put your seatbelt on thing, really matters on these planes. So everything is shaking. And then if there's even a cloud, they shake flying through a cloud. It's not just turbulence. Half the flight from Indonesia to Australia, the seatbelt light is on and you're sitting there holding on and then lightning is striking the cloud. And I'm this is how, and then you find out that apparently on this airline, in America, when was the last time you heard about American Airlines having a plane crash? You haven't. Because if they did, it'd be a really big deal. Apparently on this airline, the notion of a plane crashing is not entirely abnormal. It happens once every year or two, a plane crashes. It's just, they just kind of accept it that every couple of years on Thai Lion Air, because remember the flight that went down, that was Malaysian Air. Malaysian Air and Thai Lion Air are like cousins. They're very similar in the quality of the planes. And so but I want to go to Australia and I wanted to go to Indonesia, and Bali was amazing. I'm not saying don't go, but you're going to have some heart palpitations. And so we get all the way to Australia and we make it. And I get there and I manage to teach the seminar. I'm not really rolling too much because at this point, I'm not as bad as I was when I was there. I get a little bit of Australian medicine. It's helping. I'm still having to run to the bathroom. It's not all day every day, so I can teach and do things, but I'm not healthy yet. I go, and mind you, this is not, so I just went from before this, I had been in Japan and Korea and Indonesia. That was the tour. And so it's not in one of those situations where not everyone speaks English and I'm worried about language. This is Australia. Everyone speaks English here. We all understand each other. So when I tell the coach, hey, can you guys please not do neon belly on me because I don't want to shit myself?
Oh, I know where this is going. Oh,
I assume that everyone understands. Right? That's what I would think. That everyone would understand that I'm a guest, I'm visiting. And by all means, break my arms and legs, guillotine me, just knee on belly is not required for a roll. Like how many rolls you been through? You didn't have a knee on belly. We can skip that one. I don't care if you want to beat me up. I don't want to shit myself. I've never shit myself in all my years of jiu-jitsu. I didn't want that to be the day. And so I'm with Natasha. She's being immensely supportive because like, even when I do dumb shit, like if it was her, she's like, she's being very reasonable. It's like, you don't have to roll. Like you taught your seminar, like it's okay. You can just hang out and watch. I'll train. She's like, I can't do that. I can't just come and watch you and just watch you go to the pro training and I'm sitting on the side holding water. Like, unless I have something broken, I just can't do that. And so like, we're getting through, everything's fine. I get through, we're doing round robin, everyone's kind of doing specific training. Obviously, shout out to Essence in Perth. Like they run their pro training was, as someone who obsesses about teaching and growing a team, like they run a great program out there. They're doing it right. They have good quality teaching and they have specific training. They have modulated resistance. Like I love the class because I'm always teaching. So taking a class is always fun. I loved the pro training. And then they were nice enough after training with them, they invited me back before I left to teach at one of the pro trainings. So like that was really cool of them as well after that. Partially to do with how the training went. So the training went pretty well. I'm rolling. They got some good guys. Everything's fine. Of course, it's at the end of class. Now we're doing free sparring. And so, of course, the largest black belt in the room is who wants to roll with me. And I'm fine with it, but I have my one stipulation. So I didn't repeat it. I should have repeated. Hey, remember an hour ago when I said, please don't knee on belly me? I meant it, but I did not repeat it. And points. I can't state if this was malicious or simply, maybe some people just have it in their game. I know it's like when someone says they got a hurt arm and then, but like, all you do is armbar that arm and then you're an autopilot and you accidentally end up armbarring their injured arm and you feel like an asshole, but it wasn't malicious. You just give the benefit of doubt and say this guy had a very knee on belly heavy game. The match begins. Immediately he throws my legs by and drops a knee on belly. And I feel every ounce of my body screaming in my head, you will not shit yourself today. And so I go from happy jolly roll to like my equivalent of 80cc caliber roll. I throw away my usual style is I want to roll in a way that I can roll for 3 hours. So I'm very efficient. I try to minimize my athletic output. I try to use beautiful jiu-jitsu. I want it to look effortless. At this moment, I'm like, you must beat this person as quickly as possible so that you can get to the bathroom because I'm too proud because I'm stupid. That's it. Like I said, like, even with all of my intellectual prowess, so to speak, or my desire to be the smart guy, at the end of the day, like I'm just like anybody else. A piece of me is like, I can't end the match and just go run to the bathroom and shit myself. Like, that can't be how this story ends because I know myself. I'm going to tell this story. That can't be the end of the story. So I escape. I do my thing. I'm trying to catch leg locks. I can't leg lock the guy. And because of this moment, I learned a new technique out of desperation. I went for a backstab trying like as if I was doing a leg lock, and I used my knee bar mechanics on the arm. Turns out knee barring arms is way better than arm barring arms. And I managed to get the sub, and I managed to, after that, like kind of ride out the last 30 seconds of the match, and then I sprint. Mind you, it's a small gym, so I say a sprint. I walk like 3 feet, but in my mind, it was a sprint. And I get there, and I just unload whatever was inside of me. Everyone's still training. Like one thing was, I get out, I wash my hands. There's a shower. I walk out. I'm showering. I go outside, shower, and I come back out like I'm brown. Like I'm white. I look white. Just colors out of my face. And I try my best to keep it together and tell them, thank you for having me. And Natasha is speaking as the adult in the room. Like, thank you so much for having us, being the diplomat. Like, I'm not mad, but I'm mad. You know what? Like I logical me says, like, this guy was not trying to be mean to me or do anything bad. But at the same time, like, I almost shit myself, and I have feelings about that. And I talked to the guy afterwards. Like, he's a nice guy. Like I said, like, I'm not trying to down the guy. It's one of those things where, like, I didn't know what to do, but like, as part of what I guess I learned from the lack of ego of other people, because Natasha is way smarter than me in that regard, because she's a massage therapist. And so, like, if she gets her hands damaged, that's her career.
Yep.
So in a role, if anyone ever has a wrist lock or has anything that could ruin her career, she just taps out. If someone's rolling too crazy in a way that she thinks they're going to hurt her, she says, we're done here. And they're like, what? She's like, I'm not going to roll with you anymore. Like, you showed me that you're not safe, so I'm not going to roll with you. And like, I wish that I could be that way. Like, I'm usually that way, but for me, my view comes from the fact that I didn't start in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I started out in striking martial arts. I started off with self-defense being part of why I was doing this. And my view is, like, I've spent 33 years of my life learning how to fight, learning how to punch, kick, grab, throw, submit. I should be able to keep myself safe rolling with someone who wants to hurt me. And if I feel like I can't, what have I been doing with my life? And that's, you can call it ego. That's what stops me from doing the smart thing oftentimes. And the smart thing, especially, it's going to get worse as I get older, the smart thing is to say, I'm not trying to roll that hard today. The smart thing is to say, hey, the way you're rolling is unsafe and unsustainable. I don't want to roll. And there have been times when I do it, but my pride says, this is an opportunity.
That's right.
My pride says, this is who I'm going to deal with if I get, because I'm a nice person and I don't do irresponsible things very often in my social life. So I'm not getting into bar fights. I'm not getting into street fights. I haven't had to use jiu-jitsu in that kind of a context in my life. I've broken up fights. I've moonlighted as a bouncer for like a week or two, but I haven't had the moments of that. And so the closest thing that I have to using jiu-jitsu in a real fight is irresponsible training partners. And for me, if that irresponsible training partner, if the gap in skill between me and them is big enough, they're an opportunity for me to show what jiu-jitsu is to me. And what jiu-jitsu is to me is that if this person wants to hurt me, I should be able to subdue them without hurting either of us. Yep. That's the beauty of jiu-jitsu. Because before jiu-jitsu, I did striking arts. And I could subdue you, but I'm going to leave a lot of damage. I might break a rib. I might have massive welt on your thigh from Muay Thai. But with jiu-jitsu, I can hold you down and be like, hey, calm down. Hey, the way you're rolling isn't appropriate. But do it from a place of the art you're trying to learn works. Look, jiu-jitsu works, but we don't have to train this way. Because I know that when I was a beginner and I was irresponsible, if somebody, before they even beat me, said, hey, we don't do that here, I'm like, oh, your martial art doesn't work. And so that's what holds me back from being perfectly responsible like I should be. Now, mind you, if I've rolled this person before, then it's like, hey, don't roll that way anymore. But if I've never rolled with you and you're rolling irresponsibly, and I feel there's a gap in skill between us, I feel I should still be able to subdue you. And that is, I guess, the meme, that's my toxic trait. That's the thing that I can't let go of, even to my own detriment. Right now, I have a neck injury for this exact reason. And so I don't know. I don't know. I know that I'm going to have to stop. I'm going to have to be more responsible. But I also know that the reason why I believe jiu-jitsu works is because smaller people were able to manhandle me when I was being irresponsible. And that's part of why I didn't quit. And part of why I know a lot of big, brutish guys stay in jiu-jitsu is because you show them another way. Hey, look, yeah. And they're like, yeah, you didn't even hurt me. Yeah, I didn't even hurt you. I don't have to hurt you. That's the cool thing about jiu-jitsu, is that I have the choice of causing damage, not the necessity.
Well, many consider this that point of control, that we are so much in charge of that situation that we can literally make choices to take this past point of tolerance or let go, and it's ultimately our choice to make that decision. You know what? Like while you were talking about this specifically, your incident in Australia, I do feel we should have Natasha on the show and get her perspective on that whole event as a third party. Do another one with Natasha, for sure. As a third party viewer, you know what I mean? Because
the thing is, she has a much better, especially since COVID. Like her memory is better than mine. So like my stories are true as much as my memory is accurate, and my memory is not perfect.
That's all that matters.
So she will definitely, and that's the thing. Like I'll say stuff, and she'll be like, Charles, like that happened, but
not quite that way.
Well, no. Occasionally, like everything that happened, but especially with like certain things that were said. Like I was telling a story recently, and she's like, Charles, like I said that. Like you didn't say that.
Stole her
because it was a really good line, and I'm like, that was a really good line. I must have said. She's like, I said that. Like everything else is true, but like when like the great punchline happened in my version of the story, I said it, and she's like, I'm the one who said that.
I was just listening.
Charles, get your story together.
Yeah, I was listening to Conan O'Brien recently, and he was saying the same thing. Something will happen at home or wherever, and then he'll retell the story, and it's usually his kids that are like, no, Dad, that's not how it happened. This is how it happened. And he's like, oh, but in my version, I'm the star. Or in my version, I was the funny one.
That's right. What amazing stories. Listen, before we start wrapping this up, we've been at this for over an hour. But before we start wrapping this up, what we do end of every episode, we have a question for you from a previous guest. But he didn't know that you are going to be answering it. So in a sense, he asked it completely in blind. Gary's going to take a lead on this, but always creates an interesting end to the conversation and to the episode.
I like that.
Yeah. So this is from Rayron Gracie. And
cool.
Yeah, it's a simple one, but I'm surprised we haven't had it yet. And it's just, how has jiu-jitsu changed your life?
Oh, wow. Huh. I could say it a lot of ways, but I'm trying to use jiu-jitsu in particular because martial arts has been a steady thing in my whole life. But I'd say that jiu-jitsu has changed my life in so many ways. I guess just it's given me an avenue by which I get to actually be a teacher. And I know that sounds like not much, but to me it was massive. I graduated college with a degree in physics and a minor in education, fully thinking I could be a teacher in academia. I looked into what the Florida education system was and what it would mean for me to be a teacher and how I would be treated and the amount of autonomy that I would have. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And then I looked at working, and I had a regular day job for 8.5 years, but I always loved sharing. And like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has given me a way where I get to do the thing that I love more than anything, which is share and tell stories and tell jokes and help people. I love trying to solve problems and help people empower themselves and make people realize things and have a platform. Jiu-Jitsu has given me a platform for my creativity. It's allowed me to effectively live my life like a touring musician. And I don't think I would have done that without jiu-jitsu. I had skills in karate and kickboxing and all that. But I remember back in 2005, when I first went to Europe as a first degree karate black belt with having trained karate my whole life. And I went to a karate gym and asked them if I could share something. And they laughed at me. Like, you're just a first degree black belt in karate. That's nothing. And they didn't care. They didn't want to learn anything from me. They had no desire for that. And not to mention that, like, they're so divided, but like, once I got my black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's like a passport to anywhere, especially countries like when I went to Vietnam, where there were only 2 black belts in the whole country when I went. Just having a black belt, like, I'm immediately like the lowest tier of celebrity that you can be. Which is
and he says it with a straight mind too.
And like, because it is like, what I mean by that is like, I don't actually like it. I don't like being treated strange, but it's the truth. Like I got treated as a guest of honor in the gym, and I didn't even want to teach. I remember in Vietnam, I showed up just asking if I could come train, and I get there and like 40 kids, not kids, adults, but young people are all lined up, sitting perfectly in their geese, staring at me. And the coach is looking at me saying, "You teach class?" And I'm like, no, Mr. Hiro, you teach class? Like, I guess I'm teaching class.
This was not a question. That was a request.
And, but just the amount of adventures and experiences, like none of that would have happened without Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I probably could have still traveled and seen things, but like, I have friends in like all over the world, and almost anywhere that I go, like, I get to see a town like a local. Like I go to places like I said, like my family's from Jamaica. I describe myself as ambiguously brown. And so like,
I have never heard anybody say that.
No, I get it. I see where you're coming from.
well, because it's not just my family's from Jamaica, but like my family's entirely mixed. Both my parents are mixed, and one of each of their parents is mixed. So the whole world went to Jamaica and made babies. That's my family. Because I have Indian in my family, I have Jewish in my family, I have Irish and Scottish and so much in my family. And obviously like African American, I have so many, or African Jamaican, I guess, Afro Jamaican, Arawak, Indian, Native, like everything is in my family. I'm everything. As you cut my hair right, I could play almost any part. And whenever I'm in a country with brown people, they assume that I'm from their country as long as I don't talk. As long as I shut up. I could be Brazilian. I could be Turkish. I just shut up. But there's also places that I go and people are like, "You went there? They're racist there. They don't like you." Really? They were great. They were amazing. Even inside America, I go to places in the deep South where people are like, "You went there?" But they're great. Through jiu-jitsu, through this common bond, I'm able to connect with people from every culture, from everywhere. And like, because we share jiu-jitsu, like whether it be across the political landscape, it doesn't matter where I go. I've been everywhere and I've been treated well. I've been treated with respect and dignity and treated as an honored guest because I'm coming to share jiu-jitsu. And then I get to relate to people. And to me, that's just so powerful that like simply because we share this thing, all of these presumptions that I've been told about people from these various countries and places I've been, it's not true. I'm sure there exist people that are racist, sexist, have problems with religion. Yes. But through jiu-jitsu, I've met people in all those places that are fabulous and treat me no different than people anywhere in America or England or any of the places that are supposedly more civilized.
Well,
so like,
and that's
amazing.
That's beautiful. That's the beautiful part behind this jiu-jitsu community, that no matter where we are finding this common bond, if you will, and life is just simply beautiful, you know?
And so it gave me this view of the world where like, yes, there's problems. Yes, there's people that suck everywhere. But at their core, like everywhere on earth, I've met groups of people that are amazing. And so like, it kind of frees me of this view of like, people from country X are evil. People from country Y are like, no, they're not. The government of that country might be doing some fucked up shit. Yeah.
I'll tell you.
But there's no way the whole country's bad.
I'll tell you, I wish more people had that outlook on life. I think the world would be a very different place if everybody shared similar thoughts or similar mentality as what you're describing at this moment.
But I think it's part of the exposure, right? Like, I think that's what travel does. That's part of why I love travel is like, if you stay in your hometown and all you know is what's in your hometown,
you don't know anything
whatever
else
is lacking in your hometown is going to be a blind spot. And you're going to believe what you're told about the outside world.
Yeah.
And especially now with social media and deep fakes and the internet, and you can be told a package of lies. I went to Colombia with Natasha. It's where half of her family is from. We were in Cali, Colombia during the protests. And I was watching on TV, the police with a water cannon and a dude with a trash can lid fighting the police. And like, you would think the whole country's burning down. And then we went there, we walked around, just wasn't the case. Yes, there was protests going on. Yes, there was some violence in some pockets. But for most of the country, most of where I was in Cali, Colombia, it's exactly the epicenter of the protests that are supposedly happening. It was just a normal day in life. Walking around, eating the most delicious arepas on earth. I'm sorry, I know a lot of countries make arepas. Cali, Colombia, arepa de choclo. Oh, choclo is a sweet corn, and they make a masa out of it. And they put this special Colombian cheese on there, and they press it together, and it just crumbles in your mouth. I'm salivating just thinking about it.
Charles, you understand that? You understand we're gonna have to go get food right now, right?
I haven't eaten anything all day. I thought the shitting your pants was gonna ruin my appetite, but now I want to eat again.
I'm happy to bring you back. If you could ever get a chance to get an arepa de choclo from an authentic spot, it is magical. They sell them frozen. You can get them frozen at like your local Latin market, and they're pretty good, but they don't hold a flame to the real thing when you go there. So like, that's another reason. Like, I love food, and I've gotten to eat some of the most delicious food all over. Everywhere's got their thing. And like, I have my thing that I love everywhere that I go. Arepa de choclo in Cali, Colombia, Turkish food in Germany. I know it's a weird Turkish food in Germany. Like, there's just Lebanese food in England, Lebanese food in London. Oh my God. Like London, I love England. The English food is English food, but their immigrant food. Oh my God. The immigrant food in London is magically good.
Well, listen, as we continue listening to this story, it is quite visible that you enjoy what you do. You love your life right now, traveling around the world. You know, and as we're wrapping up this conversation, you know, I personally will be sitting back and kind of just watching you. What else, and where else you're traveling and what you're doing? Because I think many people today, unfortunately, they are stuck in a vortex of, you know, unhappiness, in a vortex of life sucks. You know, versus what you're doing is the completely opposite. You enjoy every second of it and you embrace it. And I think that simply is amazing. Gary?
No, I was just going to, you know, the whole episode I thought is great and we've had a lot of fun, but I think that last 10, 15 minutes or so is really hopefully going to make a big impact on people. Because you know, what you just said, everything was important, but I think there was a definite weight to these last 15 minutes or so. So thank you so much. It was awesome.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been amazing.
If anybody's looking for on social media, where can they find you? Are you on websites? How can anybody connect with you?
If you want to follow my tours, because I have pretty much, I'm going to be in the U.S. for most of the rest of the year. I did most of my international stuff early in the year, so I'm going to be in the U.S. So I have a tour. I'm going to be in South Dakota this weekend, in Rapid City, and then Nebraska on Sunday. But if you want the whole tour, it's charlesharriott.com. My last name is Harriott, spelled like Marriott, but with an H. So charlesharriott.com. And then I kind of, because my name is a funny spelling, I just got that everywhere. So I'm just Charles Harriott on Instagram, on Facebook, I'm Charles Harriott. And so if you just type that name in everywhere, I really bought up my my internet real estate of my name. So you don't have to, it's not like Charlie H, nothing like that. It's just Charles Harriott is what it is. BJJ Fanatics, I got 4 instructionals out there that I'm really, really proud of. If you want to get those, especially my most recent one is defense to offense, attacks from the elbow frame. I obsessed for 3 years, and at the end of 3 years, my result of all of my research was that. This is what I spent 3 years obsessing over, was putting my arm in this position, along with the sister DVD to it, Unstoppable Stand-Ups that I made with Chris Paynes. But if you want to have me out, shoot me a message on social media. If you want to find me, charlesharriott.com has my tour schedule, and you just scroll down and it shows you where I'm going to be. I'm actually going to be all over the U.S. for the next couple of months, and then my schedule for the winter will be coming out quite soon. My summer and fall is currently on the website.
Cool. And as always, we put all the links in the show notes. So if you guys are interested in connecting with him or following him via the seminars or the visits that he's making, feel free to check out the show notes in the below.
Thank you so much.
All right. Charles, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for the great story, sharing your wisdom and sharing your journey for the past hour and a half.
Yeah. That was a good one.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out. We'll be watching it from a sideline.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Peace.
Later.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.